Peter from A&P-Reacts. I'm here today with Stevic of 12-Foot Ninja to talk about Vengeance, out right now as we're speaking. The album is out. How's it going?
Good. I think much better now that this album is out. So yeah.
I have to ask you this. Where is your starting point when you're creating an album as unique as Vengeance is?
The starting point. It's hard to answer that. The starting point. I think it's, just like any other album. It just starts at the start, and it's really, I think the best explanation for this kind of music, it's just a jigsaw puzzle. Like, and you start over here and you make, there's like a leg or something, and then you might work over there for a while, and hopefully you keep putting the pieces down and then stand back and you have some kind of a picture.
Do you guys take a different creative approach from record to record, or by now you kind of have like a mold in terms of how things get started and how all the little pieces come in and start to make that big puzzle?
I think we've developed, I guess, a shorthand of the most efficient processes. There's not necessarily just one, but because it's like solving problems a lot of the time. Like, so it's sort of, like troubleshooting, when you troubleshoot something, you usually have a step sort of process. I think we've just got multiple troubleshooting like processes that tend to be, you get permutations of those. That's why it's difficult to sort of nail it as one thing, because it could be a mutant of multiple things, and each time it's slightly different. And I guess it's that kind of ping pong match between inspired kind of intuitive creative writing and more methodical cognitive architectural kind of writing, and then somewhere in the middle is kind of like trying to harness the creativity to execute the purpose of the music.
It's funny that you call the creative process behind your music troubleshooting, because it's really interesting, because when you listen to an album like Vengeance, it's coming from so many different angles. There's so many things being thrown at the listener that we almost have to troubleshoot our way through the record. So I just find it really interesting that you describe the creative process as troubleshooting.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. Like, this album, I don't really know what it sounds like, because it's sort of, I've been working on it with a monocle, one of those kind of microscopic kind of things. And now, we get to sit back and go, what have we got? It's weird. I wish I could, I wish I could kind of have a better or more interesting way of describing how it all happens. But yeah, I mean, it's just all I can come up with is it's puzzle, Yeah,
it's funny that you're saying this, because I have a way of describing this album, and to me, this album is the sound of the 80s. When I think of the 80s, and I think all of the great things that I experienced in the 80s, like arcade rooms, the smell of cigarettes in those arcade rooms, like fax machines, modems, like all of the things that you could go back and connect with the 80s. This record is kind of like a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle of all of those things that happened throughout that decade. Is that a good way of looking at it?
It is. That's spot on. I mean, it's definitely got an 80s inspired, I think the 80s is kind of like the key. If you could think of concepts in a musical analogy, it's like the key is 80s. What are all the diatonic concepts that you can extrapolate from that key? And, but thinking of it from a theme perspective, that kind of was like the North Star of this album. It was the guiding commonality, is it kept returning to this 80s thing. And I can't really explain why. It just was an impulse that I followed. Like, I just kind of went with it, and the guys were into it. And it's kind of, it sort of evolved from that. And I think it could be, if I try and work out why, I mean, I was watching a lot of TV shows that kind of dealt with time travel, like at this German one called Dark that I just loved.
That show is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, just, I don't know, had this kind of poetic way of playing with that, you know, time and mortality and, you know, and I guess Stranger Things really kind of kicked in the nostalgia. But I mean, I'm a huge Huey Lewis and the News fan. And lockdown, we did a cover of a Huey Lewis song, and then I got to connect with Huey Lewis, and then that kind of took me back. And I made a video game and I wanted a DeLorean into it, so I spoke to the CEO, the vice president of DeLorean, and got permission to use that. And I was, getting into Back to the Future, and all of these things kind of came back like they were like in real time again. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my attempt at going, what happened, and I think also maybe on a psychological level, I was kind of wanting to get back to a simpler time, where movies were like just entertaining and, and there was this sort of type of cinema and pop culture that was unique. Yeah. And I found myself listening to a lot of 80s and 90s radio, like on my clock radio. I wake up to like digital radio playing all these old songs, and and coincidentally, in a coincidence, the guitarist from the Doobie Brothers has started playing like the Outlier Shuriken, and like Doobie Brothers is one of my all-time favorite bands. So I was listening to their catalog and getting back into it, and yeah, I don't know. I think the art was cool. It was an ostentatious time. It was a simpler time, and it was kind of intoxicating to dive into it. And what came out is vengeance, and it kind of, even the word vengeance sounds like something that you would see on a Van Damme poster. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Even everything, even about the artwork. That's one of the things I loved about this record, is because it's not just about what's inside the album. It starts with what's on the outside, the artwork, the arcade, the desert, the dystopian picture of this arcade in the middle of this desert scene. The way vengeance looks like, very Jean-Claude Van Damme, I must say. It does have that kind of vibe. So everything about this album kind of pulls you into that arena. So I feel like you guys did a magnificent job tying it all together.
Thank you. That means a lot. I mean, that really is probably one of the only things that we'd hope would happen, is that it's sort of a little detour from the status quo, and yeah, if it's done that, that's brilliant. So it's great to hear.
What kind of challenges does a record like this throw at you when you're during the creative process, when you're putting it all together?
I think it's, what kind of challenges? I think it's about, there was a lot of debate with lyrics, like, does that work? Does that make sense? Could this be said better? Like, is there a more efficient way to do this? Are we emphasizing the correct stresses in accordance to the way people speak? Like, is that melody as interesting as it can be? Like, because Nick's a super versatile vocalist, but he's also a baritone. So getting a sense of urgency out of a baritone is difficult. So you have to think about what key you're in, so that when you intervallically hit those high notes, you've got to kind of think of where your headroom is. And then sometimes we didn't write thinking that, and then we had to solve that problem of like, how do we have an anthemic chorus if we've kind of exhausted, so you've got to do some melodic kind of work. Yes, I mean, we've done a lot of iterations of these songs. Like, some of them get rewritten, like Over and Out, I think it's been rewritten probably about 10 times. Like, there's so many different versions of that song. And that, that's just what I said, is we solved the problem of the urgency thing by getting Tatiana in, because, the chorus wasn't sort of hitting as hard as we wanted to. It needed a higher voice. And so we thought, why not get a female vocalist? And Tatiana was the first that came up. So yeah, I mean, that's an example of, I guess, a problem or a challenge that we solved by, we, at least to the best of our ability, tried to solve by, bringing in a different voice. So all the timbral textural stuff is a big part of 12-Foot Ninja, because the genre exploration doesn't work unless you pay respect to the building blocks that make that genre that genre. That's why I think a little bit of a music snob in me comes out when people write off Latin music as quirky. Like, I'm not Latin, of Latin descent, but Latin is such an umbrella term. There's over 50 genres under the Latin umbrella, and we don't think that any of it's funny. Like, it's awesome, So it does annoy me a little bit if people hear bossa and think it's silly, because we take it seriously, And I'd never want anyone who I forgot his name. Tito Puentes, I think his name is, Junior, the son of the famous, percussionist. He's a percussionist, and he was gave us kudos. And that, to me, that was so powerful and important, that someone who this is their thing, you said, good work. Because we're not trying to take the piss out of genres. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally does. And you brought Tatiana. I was going to ask you about her. When you bring somebody in, do you feel like it's important to bring them in to add value to what you're trying to do, and not just to say that, oh, I know we got this person on a track?
Oh, 100%. I mean, Tatiana was brought in to solve a problem that what we called a problem is we wanted the track to be more dramatic and lift. And we identified that, a big part of that was the register. So Nick did the vocal arranging and created all the harmonies, put it together for Tatiana. It definitely wasn't a strategic move. It was a musical move. And I think people are I've been really pleased that people have cottoned on to, she features all the way through. We didn't just, she's not in there as a gimmick. We didn't just whack her in. She's singing, and we're utilizing her instrument in a cool way. And we didn't want her to scream all the way through it. There's barely any screaming, because she already is so great at that with Ginger. We wanted to use it sparingly and do something different as well. So yeah, no, I think people, like I said, people have cottoned on that this isn't just Beyonce singing a couple of lines in a rapper's thing to get the publishing income or some shit. It's absolutely for the song. That's what we thought would be cool, and it turned out great. We're really happy with it, and we love those guys. And when I say guys, I mean the gender neutral definition of guys.
The Ginger Camp. Let's go with that.
Yes, the Ginger Camp.
The Ginger Camp. The uniqueness of the songs on this album, does that create a problem for you guys when it comes down to putting a track listing together? Because I thought you guys did a phenomenal job, but I wouldn't want to be in that room with these songs and then I'll put them in an order that works. I wouldn't know where to start.
I'm with you on that. I'm terrible at set lists and track orders. I'm focused on the detail of every song, but I'm terrible at putting it together. I don't even know who did that. It could have been Nick and Dave, our label and manager. He may have sort of sculpted that. Yeah, it could have been Ro. Maybe everyone except me. Yeah, I'm terrible at that sort of thing. Yeah, because to me, it's an album is. I don't know. I tend to, and I think this is probably highlights my sort of view of music. I don't really think of it as, it's not like a classical album where, you got movements that kind of go through the seasons of the year or something. It's really just a bunch of songs that we worked on and looked at as individual songs, and they're put together on an album. And there are some overarching intentions, but it's not necessarily meant to be, I guess, a sonic journey as such. And well, at least in my head, but it's become that too. So yeah, I don't know, man. I probably, that's a question I probably can't really answer with any kind of semblance of sense.
You did an okay job.
Thank you.
The moment I heard the album and I knew I was going to chat with you, this question, I was like, I have to ask him about a fax machine. At what point in time do you guys think it's a great idea to throw a fax machine sound into?
Well, that was a modem. That was a dial-up modem.
Oh, was it a modem?
Yeah, dial-up modem, but it does sound a lot like a fax machine. That giggle, 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 giggle. I know that sound, like, and I always thought it was interesting because it has rhythm. And I thought, can I use this? And I did have to manipulate it. I tuned it to fit into the song. And I actually quantized each of the parts. So I edited it quite a lot to work, but you can clearly hear that it's that, it does sound like, when you ring the wrong number and you get the fax machine, it's similar sound to a dial-up modem. But for me, I just remember that sound, waiting for that to connect and, having painfully slow internet. Like when I don't even know when I was connected to the internet. I was probably quite old in high school, maybe towards the end of high school. And it would be to, send an email or use ICQ or something. But yeah, I'd sit there hearing that noise, and I think it just embedded into my skull.
That noise was such a huge part of my college years with my 28.8 fax modem. Like waiting.
Well, that's the thing. The fax modem. Maybe that's why. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's the same.
Yeah, because they were built as a pair. It was like you could use it as fax and you could use it as modem. It was all part as one.
Yeah, so maybe it does make the same noise. I'll have to look into that, but I'm pretty sure now that, when you ring a fax, you've called a fax, like it's a sound, and you're like, that's a fax on the other end. It's got its own voice. The same as that modem. So yeah, I mean, I wanted to put that there because it's just part of peppering the whole thing with little signs of a time past,
Mm-hmm. What was your game plan for the guitar sound? Because I thought the guitars were phenomenal. I mean, we could get lost with all the other attributes that you guys threw into this album because they just jump out so much at the listener. But let's not forget how sound the guitars are throughout the album. Did you have a game plan coming in?
Well, I started using Neural DSP plugins, and I've now got the Cortex. I definitely like Doug from Dark Glass and Neural DSP. I love what he's doing and what the whole company is doing and their philosophy and all that stuff. And I really liked, I mean, the guitar tones, both clean and heavy, were pretty inspiring. So we used a lot of that. We also used Easy Mix by Toontrack because Forrester, who mixed and mastered the album, he's, he makes presets and stuff. So he's got the under the hood version of Easy Mix and can get in and kind of tweak parameters that aren't available to everyone else. So I think it was a combination of those two things. And I think even there's some Helix on there too. So, really with 12-Foot Ninja, the cornerstone is the heavy sound. It doesn't change. And we try and keep that a constant sort of, I guess, anchored thing. And then really it's weird because I think I've only got about 5 guitar sounds, like an acoustic sound, a clean sound, a heavy sound, a lead sound, and maybe a slightly crunchy, bluesy sort of sound. And that's it. And really, then on top of that, you got effects and any kind of sound design. But I like to keep things very, very simple, and then it actually makes it easier to be complex.
Cultural War is a song that blew my mind. Like, this is the heaviest song on the record by far, perhaps one of the heaviest songs you guys have ever done. And then you threw in there some mariachi, and I was like, what just happened here? Like, I'm not hating it, like I'm loving it, but I didn't see this one coming at all. Like, my jaw dropped to the ground. What's happening in my brain? Like, what are these guys doing to me right now? Throwing something that feels like so out of place into this heavy song, and somehow here I am bobbing my head and just grooving along with it. Like, how does that come together?
I think that was Roe, because Nick wrote the guitar part for he wrote the Culture War was one of the things that he came to the table with, and he programmed guitar because he's not a guitar player. So whenever you get someone who doesn't play an instrument, they tend to be unrestricted by convention, and it's certainly an unconventional track. But then Roe kind of made it more appropriate for guitar, and then somehow in that process he was like, you know, he did this mariachi thing, and then I produced it and just went to town with it. And then that kind of down, that kind of melody works over the heavy stuff. I don't know. It's kind of cool. Maybe in part of our head, it's like, it's I guess a little homage to our good friend Jose Mangan. You know, he's Mexican, and he loves metal, like he loves brutal shit. And I think that probably played a part, that he's like, you know, it's like the two worlds coming together, because we see him as like a metal mariachi soldier, you know, marching through Pantera Town, like, you know, drinking tequila and smoking weed. That's Jose, you know? So I think if anything, he's in there as an influence, just him as a guy. Like he's just
just by existing.
And, you know, he gives me these clothes, and I like, you know, he's just such a unique dude. And it's funny, you know, when we met Jose, we don't know anything about Sirius XM, or like, we don't get it. Like, we didn't know when he said he's from Sirius XM, to us, it could have been like some small, like, you know, who is this dude? And I think he just blew us away with his energy. And I've come to know him. He is always like that. Like, yeah. So I could talk a lot about him. He's just one of those rare people that is so passionate about metal. Like, he used to wake his daughters up when they were like little kids with fucking Slayer. Like, through the house, he would pump it. And I'll never forget, I just happened to be there. I was at NAMM, I think, doing something with Line 6, and his eldest daughter brought a boy home for the first time, and he gave the dude this talk, you know, and I almost started filming it, because he was like, "Do you listen to Pantera?" And he was like fucking eyeballing this kid. He's like, "No, sir." He's like, "Yeah, we're gonna have to change that, you know, like, if you're gonna be with my daughter, you gotta like Pantera." And I'm like, "Fuck, this guy's." He's like, "Do you kill little animals? You know, do you go and, like," you know, he was basically trying to work out if this kid's Jeffrey Dahmer or something, you know, like, it's such a weird little like speech and question. I was like, it was like, yeah. Anyway, sorry, I went on a tangent, but Culture War, I think, because of how heavy it was, it reminded us of Jose, and maybe on some kind of level, the mariachi thing kind of just seemed like perfectly normal.
Perfectly normal for it. With the album the album is out now. When people are watching this video, the album is already out. So with reviews hitting the airwaves, do you watch or listen or read to reviews? And if you do you discover things about the album that other people found out that you not even knew they were there? Because, you know, sometimes we get into the weeds when it comes to our favorite records.
Yeah, I watched your React video. Like, it popped up in my algorithm, and I was impressed by your articulate sort of an analysis. Like, you jumped out as an impressive, because I see them, you know, and sometimes I'm watching it and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Because I'll just sit there, like, the song's playing and they're just sitting there, and they'll be like, and then, like, that's their reaction, you know? Whereas you kind of broke it down and kind of tried to get inside it and did a bit of an autopsy on it. And, you know, that's why it stuck out to me. I think you do a really good job there. You know, some reviews, I think, when people don't have a musical understanding and they try and pass off like they do, it's hard to not be a little bit kind of irritated by that. Because yeah, I mean, it kind of, you enter that world of just commentators and critics and people, yeah, who can't articulate it. It's sort of, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, Ro describes it's like when you go to the mechanic, if you don't know anything about cars, but you start trying to talk like you understand what's going on. Like, oh yeah, is it the carburetor, is it? And you don't know what a carburetor is, but you're just sort of faking it. You know, we see those kind of reviews where it's like, these journalists have no idea what they're talking about, you know? But again, everyone is entitled to their subjective view. I just like it when they stay in that lane. Like they can go, I fucking hate this. I would prefer that than some half-assed attempt at trying to sound like they know what they're on about. So I make a distinction when I watched you. I'm like, no, this guy, you've been around the block. I can tell you know your shit, and you did a good job, and all the power to you. You know, keep doing it. Keep the quality high. You know, that's what I'd say.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. One last question for you. Every time we go through an experience, that experience leaves marks. I'm the kind of guy that when I listen to an album, that listening to that album, not just for the first time, but every time you go back at it, it is an experience and it does leave marks. Does this record leave some marks with you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pain, you know, because it was such a strange process, man. Like, it's very unnatural to make an album and sit on it for so long. Like, and you know, we've got COVID to kind of thank for that. It's been very painful and weird. You know, and pain, I probably need to define pain, frustration and doubt, and like, what are we doing, and being lost, you know, that there's that, those kind of emotions are connected to this. So the thing that you just described is being born today. Like the mark that will stay will be determined by the people, like, because getting here has been, you know, difficult. So that's why we're so looking forward to just knowing what this is, you know, and because we can't, I personally can't, it's not like I put it down, I go, I know what this is this and this, and you know, it's like, no, it's actually the experience of it through other people that defines my experience of it to a certain degree. Like, was all of this worth it? You know, like, they're the kind of questions I have. Did it land? Has it put a smile on people's face? Did they feel that one? You know, like, they're the kind of extrinsic rewards, because, you know, we're certainly not going to make money out of it. I hope we do. You know, that would be nice. But, yeah, but you know, it's just I just don't know if it's possible to make money out of albums. Well, that's changing. It's definitely changing. And I mean, we do make money out of it. I shouldn't say we don't make money out of it. It's just not enough to justify the time it takes to do it. Like, there's a mismatch there. And I mean, that's our fault for trying to make these puzzles, you know? Like, if we just smashed out a bunch of horse shit, we probably wouldn't care. And we're like, yeah, this is great. But yeah, we definitely, I can't not spend a lot of time on the detail. It's just, you know, it's a compulsion. And I do it for fun, like, no matter what. It's just hard when you do it as a career. The pressure changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
yeah.
Instead of troubleshooting, maybe if you guys had outsourced, there would be more money to be made.
Yeah. No, yeah. Absolutely. But yeah.
It's difficult. I totally hear you. The music world, changes need to happen at some point in time. Otherwise, the ecosystem is not going to survive.
Well, they are. What's, you know, to end, not to end on a bitter note, what SoundCloud and Deezer are doing is fantastic. Like, they've introduced a user-centric model of royalty distribution, which is game-changing for artists. It's just they don't have market share. Mm-hmm. So it's the Spotify's, Apple's, and Amazon's, and Google's and stuff. If they start implementing the user-centric model of royalty distribution, which they won't, because the shareholders and the major labels and subscription is driven by legacy content to a large degree. So there almost needs to be a branch, a new platform specifically targeted at the 99% of content which isn't legacy or tied up to major labels, that, you know, will make the ecosystem immediately jump forward, you know, 2 decimal points. That what's exciting to me is that I can define the problem and the solution. It's just about the massive giant, you know, like Pacific Rim type battle between these robots that are so much bigger than anyone like me. I can't really influence it other than just to talk about it and go, you know, I think streaming is brilliant. It's unbelievably convenient and awesome. And I'd never for a second like go, it should be this way. I don't think consumers need to pay any more money. I just think what happens to the money when the platforms get it is the area that I'm fixated on. And I think if there was going to be a bad guy, it's major labels. So that's my.
They're still holding a lot of the cards.
Yeah, and I mean, I just watched a Dave Chappelle piece, him talking about HBO and his Chappelle show, and I mean, he's talking about the industry and everything he said. You can apply that to the music industry as well. Major labels have got a lot to answer for as far as I'm concerned. And I can say that because I don't give a fuck. You know, like they've got nothing to do with me. I'll never be on a major label. If I could crush them all, I would.
Pacific Rim style.
Yeah. 12-foot ninja style. That would be awesome. But in saying that, there's really BMG is very, very good. Like from the publishing side, they're actually kind of ethical, but the others, they're in the gun for me. I'm writing their name on bullets, you know, that not just to be clear, metaphorical bullets.
Metaphorically speaking.
I'm not going to fucking go and, yeah. But I mean, I'm like, dude, someone needs to make a doco about the back, you know, the shareholding they have in like Spotify and the different deal they have. Like, it's gross.
Yeah, I just think there's not enough people talking about it, and I think the awareness has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
I appreciate you're talking about it because not a lot of people are willing to go down that road, you know.
Well, because you know what happens when they do, because artists are fundamentally contrarian, they'll bag other artists for whinging. You know, like it's hard to unify artists, you know. But there are like the singer from Gomez on Twitter, and what he's doing in the UK is brilliant. Like, but it's hard to get people to open their mind to like, what are we saying? Like, because there also is a lot of complainers that are like, I should be bigger. You know, that's not what I'm saying. Like 12-foot Ninja is big enough to make it work forever, but we can't. It's like we've got this barricade of like, you know, the music. We can't. Yeah, it's a complicated thing, but like our fans are amazing, and we've got enough. Like we could make it work, but it's like not in the current system. We need to be about 5 times bigger than what we are to make it work in the current system. So then you could argue, well, you're not good enough. But then what about all the fans that we have? You know, so it's stupid. And then you've got you know, there are some YouTubers like giving people the wrong information, like that I've seen like people who position themselves as commentators are often just idiots, you know. Frustrating. But yeah, it's something I am passionate about, and I'll definitely, you know, I'll always talk about this stuff, like, because it's like I said, there's a problem, but there also is a solution. And the thing that can influence technological change is people and awareness. Like, you see things change overnight. Like, look what's going to happen with Facebook. You know, watch what's going to happen with that.
Yeah, I see your perspective, because from my end, having the channel and having the awareness that I have now is completely different than what it was like 5 years ago as a fan. And I think a lot of the fans are a little bit blinded to what actually happens behind the curtains in terms of how artists gets paid and how royalties work and copyrights on YouTube and that sort of stuff. A lot of the fans are completely oblivious to it. So their perception of their favorite bands, that they're living it up and rockstar life, it's completely removed from reality, outside of the 1%, as you know. And I think a lot of the artists also promote that image because they don't want to break that image. They don't want to remove that curtain. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, exactly. There's definitely a facade that a lot of people maintain, and it's it's just weird. It's a weird thing, and that's why I'm like, good on Dave Chappelle. He doesn't need to take on HBO and air that dirty laundry. He's got enough money, but it's about the principle for him. That's why he is a legend. Like he's trying to change shit for the better when he doesn't have to. He could just walk away. So yeah, you're right. There's a stigma. It's stigmatized. I think COVID has really shown me, especially in our country, people don't really give a fuck about musicians. They care about footballers, but there hasn't been a lot of government help, it's a $1 billion industry with the live music scene. It's like, what do all the people do who are signed to majors, who can't make any money out of music, and all they make money off is touring? These people are going through tremendous mental anguish, and the system has kind of failed them. A lot of artists are struggling hard, and it's hard, man. It's very weird. Imagine being globally recognized, having international credibility, but not being able to pay your fucking rent or your bills or your mortgage or whatever. It's such a weird juxtaposition.
Yeah. Having to get a job at the local gas station or something.
Yes. That's the thing. And I don't know what it is, but people they see it as whinging. If you talk about it, and it's like, well, if everyone just shuts up and doesn't talk about it, what will happen is their favorite bands will just stop doing it. And then you go, well, so be it. But what's going to happen is bands will end up being 20 somethings, with no responsibility, that do it for pure love. They might get success and then they'll be gone. There'll be no careers that sustain. There won't be extensive bodies of work unless they're in a privileged position where they can just do it anyway. It will be bad for art. That's my thing. Maybe I sound like an old man talking like this, but
from the 80s.
From the 80s.
We're going full circle. We're going full circle here.
There we go.
From the 80s.
I'm an old man from the 80s, and I'm like, come on, it could be better.
We need to be better. Things could be a lot better if I only had my Commodore or my Atari or something.
Yeah,
life would be a lot easier.
Like Uncle Rico from the Napoleon Dynamite. If only I'd have made that shot, I'd be in my spa with my soulmate right now.
Oh God, Napoleon Dynamite, vote for Pedro.
Yep.
On that note, Stevic, thank you very much for your time today, man. I really appreciate you taking time to speak with lonely me, this poor little YouTuber who doesn't know shit for shit.
No, you do know shit from shit. I know you know shit from shit. I can tell, and that's why I'm happy to talk to you. And like I said, all the power to you. All your viewers, subscribe to this bloke. Do whatever you got to do, but keep going, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. Same thing to you guys. Nothing but love for you guys. Say hi to everybody from me. And once again, man, just from the bottom of my heart, really thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks, Pedro. You're a legend.
Take care, man. Bye.
See ya.